This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hadiwandonrunk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. And now I'll ask, are there any declarations of interest? And can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda? Tim is the mover and Janice seconder. Terrific. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And any opposed? No. And Sydney, can I just ask, do we have quorum, I guess, with all of us on the line?
Yes, we do have quorum.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Barely, but yes.
Barely, but yes. Okay, so can we share the minutes from April 6th on the screen? Or if you guys have it in your agenda package.
They are in the agenda package. I'm on my personal laptop, so I don't have them here.
No worries.
Now.
Okay, so if you can just refer to the minutes as part of your agenda package. And then if I can get a mover and a seconder to adopt both sets of minutes for April 6th and for, both. Okay, so that's Andrew. And seconder is Tim. Terrific. Okay. So now I will turn it over to Matthew Trinham, City Clerk, to speak on the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee Multi-Year Accessibility Plan. So Matthew, over to you.
So thank you, Madam Chair. So we did place this in response to a question a couple of meetings ago with regards to accessibility of buildings and overall what's happening. So I thought it would be best to put this on for everybody's information, see if there are any questions with regards to it, and just sort of explain how accessibility is managed at the city. So each organization under the AODA or Accessibility of Ontarians with Disabilities Act does need to have a accessibility committee if you're a certain size with a certain number of employees and so on and so forth, very similar to a health and safety. And what the City of Thorold has done, given its size, it's teamed up with a number of other municipalities for a joint accessibility advisory committee. So it's municipalities of Lincoln, West Lincoln, Pelham, Thorold, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Grimsby, and Port Colborne. And together we have this joint committee that meets monthly. One of their responsibilities, of course, under the Act, is to put out a multi-year accessibility plan. The last plan was developed in 2022 and goes through to 2026. We have two representatives on that committee from the City of Thorold that are appointed by council, and they sort of represent us and bring any issues to that joint committee as it goes from there. But the accessibility plan really does break down certain sections of the accessibility regulations and standards for whether it be employment, information, communication, customer service, and takes out the sections that specifically speak to those and then put that into an action plan. So it says, for example, the regulation requires you to develop and implement policies for the provisions of goods and services in the case to persons with disabilities. So you have to have the ability that if you're providing goods and services to ensure that you have a policy that deals with that. So as part of the action plan, ensuring that your accessibility policy is up to date with that as part of an annual review. It provides an accountability and sets sort of what that status is. So that's an ongoing one assigned to the clerk's office of each municipality. But there are a number of other action items within that really does break down the legislation. It speaks to what our requirements are, which requirements might rest with the accessibility committee. Another aspect to that is through this, instead of hiring an individual ourselves, we have an accessibility consultant. And that consultant is Donna Harrington, and she works with all of the area municipalities to act in the role of an accessibility advisor. So for example, relatively recently, we had some questions about the ramp that leads into the Darlene Ryan Port Robin Community Center and whether or not, because there was some damage to the sort of foundation of the ramp. So we had some questions about, can it be updated? Can it be replaced? We referred that to our accessibility consultant who advised us that it's not fully up to code the way it is. So based on that, we used funding to essentially replace the ramp altogether and build it to ensure it's fully accessible. So that's sort of how our accessibility consultant works, and when things are assigned to them, they work through the committee to have motions passed that sort of get managed by all of the member municipalities. So I think that's a fair summary of it. I don't know if everyone's had an opportunity to go through, but I'm happy to take any specific questions or if there are any concerns. I know some municipalities, they do have a little more overlap between the accessibility committee and the DEI committee. There's obvious overlap in some of shared goals and what we're trying to achieve by both committees. Again, in this case, it tends to be a little high level and really focused on the legislative responsibilities of the municipality and ensuring that everyone is aware of what their roles and responsibilities are based on that. So if there are areas that this committee feels overlap with the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, we can certainly have items referred direct to them. We can certainly invite Donna to this committee to perhaps provide a more in-depth overview of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act and sort of how perhaps this committee can play a role in that. But again, I'm happy to hear any feedback or further questions, or if there's something that you'd like us to work or look into a little bit further.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question to you, Matthew, and I'm just wondering, is there a type of report card as to how well we're doing at the City of Thorold in terms of accessibility that can give us an idea? Of course, there's always more that we can do, but I'm just wondering if there's some sort of report that outlines where we are at present.
So yes and no. Yes, in that at the beginning of this year, we actually were selected as part of a random audit from the ministry. So they come in and they just do a review of, are we doing all of the things that we're required to do and are we meeting those? And we did pass that without any issues, which is great. The ongoing sort of report card piece to it really speaks to the action plan. So as we move through these 4 years, Thorold will be reporting back through the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee to say, you know, yes, we've completed this, or no, this is still ongoing. And the committee can provide us with sort of direction to staff similar to council would in, you know, hey, you're behind on this comparison to other municipalities. We need you to action it perhaps by the end of this year. And that's how they would make recommendations back to us.
Thank you.
I would see value, I think, in hearing a bit more and understanding how we can play a part if that is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. If we can take that as direction to staff, and what I can do is I'll reach out to Donna Harrington and see if we can have her come and present maybe to our next meeting and do a proper presentation of what she does for the city and you know, perhaps where those connections are.
Fantastic. Any other questions for Matthew? Okay, not seeing any there. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, so we're moving to 7.1, the policy working group. So are there any updates or questions? I know we've strove to enact one. So Tim, over to you.
Yes, and I humbly apologize. This has probably been the busiest month since I've become counselor. There's just so many things going on. I don't know if that's typical of me, but it's been a whirlwind. So I haven't had a chance to get this working group going. Janice, while I have the opportunity, what is the best way to connect with you on Zoom, in person, over the phone, emails? Because I'd like to really get it started, and I have an idea, and I can talk about that as well. So, for yourself, Janice, what's the best way?
Yeah, Do you mean like to get it into person to discuss about it?
Would you,
Or
would you
not in
prefer to
person,
keep
whatever we
everything
wanna do?
Zoom based, or would you like to see if we can have a working group that meets somewhere, or, and I'm open to, you know, whatever works for the group. I know we're only two here today, but at least it's a start and
Yeah, whatever works for everyone else. Like maybe what we could do is just send an email out to ask the whole group what might work best
okay. Yeah.
and kind of get an idea. I don't know what your schedule is like, Tim. Mine's probably a little bit more open than yours. But yeah, we could get an idea of, you know, a time coming up soon that we might be able to kind of touch base.
Mhm. One thing I'm thinking of is that if we divide the 4 members into alphabetical groups that could look at other municipalities, A to F, G to, you know, something like that. And just do some investigative work and then come together and say, basically a show and tell. This is what I found out. This is what we have here. This is, and maybe we can start to share and borrow some of the ideas that other municipalities have already established.
Okay, Matthew, over to Matthew.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you to the counselor, as you're doing that, if there's any specific policies that you don't already have access to that you would like me to share for you to start looking at those first couple meetings, just feel free to let me know and I can share those for you.
Great. Thank you.
Well, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, so Tim, do you have a way forward then, an approach?
Yeah, I think we'll do as Janice suggested, and send out an email, and I'll just repeat what we discussed here. And then we'll see if we can pinpoint some methods of sharing with each other and getting the ball rolling. I think that's probably the most difficult part, is just getting rolling. And once we're rolling, we'll be fine. Especially if we let Matthew do the bulk of the work. He doesn't have much to do.
Okay, good. And related to that, as part of 7.2, establishing a work plan, strategic plan. I suppose this is a start of it, and then you can start to document some of those activities.
Yes.
And I think this was on there as well, if you want a separate group to be established, or if you'd like to just work with a working group you already have. It's entirely up to the committee, sort of how you'd like to move forward with it. But since we're still sort of striving towards that work plan, if we also want to be thinking just a little bit about that, and then also on the sort of to-do list is thinking towards the next couple of months when the city really starts to work on its strategic plan, ensuring that we have representation from DEI as part of that process. And I mean, Councillor O'Hare will already be part of that process by virtue of being a councillor, but if there's anybody else that we can assign to that, to sort of always be thinking about this as sort of in when we're not meeting as a group, to come back and, you know, seeing that process, reporting back to the committee. There's likely some value in that as just as we move into that process. We don't have any formal announcements on when it's starting or how it's going to process going forward. But I think there's value in us sort of being ready for that and tying that in with the overall work plan for this committee for the coming years.
That's terrific. So who's on, Tim, who's on the working group that you've formed?
I know that, sorry, let me just have a quick look here. So Janice is on it, and is it Nadine Curry Patterson? No, I'm not sure the first name. And Curry Patterson and C. McPherson. So those are the other two members who are put the name forward. So I'll reach out with emails and get it started.
Okay, and I'm not sure if this requires a motion, but I would like to put forth a separate working group that will be reviewing the strategic plan.
I would think a motion would probably be good. If anybody would like to formally sit on it, then you can include that in the motion.
Okay. So I'll put forth a motion to establish a strategic plan working group. And I will be heading that work up. And if anybody'd like to join, let me know. So if I can get someone to second the motion. Okay, Tim.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yes, of course.
And it's directed to Matthew. Matthew, should I be on that group or can I focus on the other group or?
Entirely up to you and how much you have on your plate, I'd say, Counselor. Nothing wrong with being on multiple working groups.
Okay, I'm going to just say that I could be approached for ideas. Let's leave it at that because I have so many other things going on. I don't want to get too thinly stretched out and then I'm ineffective in multiple groups. So I'd like to focus on our first working group, but I would be very open to should you want to pull me in for ideas or where you would sit or address this from a counselor's perspective. So
Terrific, thank you. And Saba?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
now we can.
Okay, sorry, my microphone was off. No, I just wanted to say I'd be interested in joining the second working group.
Terrific. That is good. Well, there is 2.5 with Tim now. All right, that's great. Okay, moving on to item 8. We're just breezing through this agenda. Are there any items for the roundtable?
You need to check that
Oh.
our Torque wanted to say something.
Sorry, go ahead, Sydney.
Through you, Madam Chair, you just have to call the question on the working group motion.
Okay, so I call the question on the working group. Are there any opposed? No, and all in favor? There we go. All right, thank you. Okay, and yeah, item 8, any items for our roundtable?
I have some. Oh, Matthew, you can go first.
Okay, over to Matthew.
Sure. I just wanted to share the significant dates for June, and it's quite a lengthy. June is quite a busy month, and I think all of them are worthy of mention. But there's a few that I just sort of wanted to highlight. I think first and foremost is there are a number of month-long observances for the month of June. It is National Indigenous History Month, of course, which started in 2009 with the passing of unanimous motion in the House of Commons. It's a time to recognize the rich history of Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. And of course, wrapped up in that, June 21st is National Indigenous Peoples Day as well, which is a day that honors the unique cultures, heritage, as well as other achievements of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people from across Turtle Island. So a lot going on with Indigenous history throughout June. It is also, of course, Pride Month. So for individuals who are SLGBTQIA+, I think I said it properly, commemorate everything that started with the Stonewall riots back in the 60s. And it's important, of course, to recognize that this month really did start as a protest and has moved to a lot of celebrations. But, we want to recognize that with everything going on in the world today, there's a lot to be said for standing up for individuals, whether you're part of the community or not, and the importance of welcoming and being comforted and celebrating everyone within our community. And of course, with that, there's a number of celebrations that are going on. We already mentioned the flag raising, but Pride Niagara is doing a number of events throughout the month. So we welcome people to certainly go to their website. We've also shared through our news Out Niagara and their website, which has a number of resources for individuals to connect with 2S LGBTQIA+ organizations for support and other resources throughout Niagara as well. Of course, it's also Seniors Month, which is a time we recognize all the amazing older Ontarians and Niagarans from across the province and Canada, really. With that, there is the Senior of the Year Awards, which is happening this month, later on in the month. So lots going on with that. And there are a number of other dates throughout as well. I won't list them all, just because there are so many, both religious and otherwise. Of course, Canadian Multiculturalism Day. There's a day for individuals, awareness of post-traumatic stress disorder, and a number of other ones as well. But I just wanted to highlight the importance. There's lots of events happening throughout June within our community and beyond. So just making that, sending that awareness to everybody and putting it out there. Okay.
Fantastic. Would there be an opportunity to have a listing of the significant dates that Thorold recognizes? And then if there's any opportunity or desire to have members of the committee present at significant dates like flag raisings and those sort of things?
Absolutely, yes. We we receive these from the region, who of course have their resources. They have staff regularly working on this, so we don't always get them in a timely fashion. But any events that the region or that the city are involved in, we can absolutely include DEI members on that as well.
Terrific. Okay, Andrew, I believe you had a question.
Yes, it's actually not exactly a question, but it's something I wanted to talk about, to start thinking about, because I
Mhm.
find it important, is that I feel like we might need to, because when there's one big group that hasn't really been dealt, that's been almost kind of pushed to the back, is neurodiversity. I feel like we should need to have a neurodiverse hiring and workplace policy. Start thinking about doing one of those to try to level the playing field.
That's a good idea, Matthew. Sorry, Andrew. So that might be something that could be reviewed as part of the strategic plan working group.
Yeah, I just thought I would mention that that's something I've been.
Okay, thank you. We've captured that.
I just thought to mention that as something to think about, because it's a large group. Because neurodiverse, I feel, is the best word, because it captures all these bunch of groups that together are probably bigger than the LGBT group, because there's so much variety.
Right, a lot of intersectionality. Good. Thank you for that. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Okay, so our next meeting is scheduled for, I think that's incorrect. It has May 4th here, but I know that's not right.
That was
So-
last meeting was supposed to be.
I know. Sydney, do you have the date for our next meeting?
Yes, sorry. The next meeting would be July 6th.
Okay, hopefully that works for everyone. I know we're getting into vacation season, but if we can just work proactively with Sydney to let her know in advance if we're planning to attend, and then that way we have a good idea whether we'll have quorum or not. So if we can get that out as soon as convenient and as soon as possible. And I think if there's no further business, that brings us to the end of our meeting. So I'm giving you one last chance if anybody wants to throw anything in. No. Okay, so our meeting is adjourned, and everybody have a fantastic evening.
Bye.
Fine.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Bye, everyone.